Okay, hello, and welcome to another Art of War read along. Um, as I said, I will be doing this in 3 parts, so I believe we ended on chapter 4. So we've done laying plans, waging war, attack by stratagem, and tactical dispositions. What the ancients called a clever fighter is one who not only wins, but excels in winning with ease. Okay, I feel like I could read all of that again, and it's the difficult part with books like these is it's not a story that you can just follow. It's like things you learn little by little. You know? So you can't just pick up where you left off. You have to remember what is it that you read last time. The consummate leader cultivates the moral law and strictly adheres to method and discipline. Thus, it is in his power to control success. Okay, but I won't repeat everything. I'm starting here with chapter 5, Energy. And I have my green highlighter if I need it. Sun Tzu said, "The control of a large force is the same principle as the control of a few men. It is merely a question of dividing up their numbers. Fighting with a large army under your command is no wise different from fighting with a small one. It is merely a question of instituting signs and signals." That is quite an interesting thought. To ensure that your whole host may withstand the brunt of the enemy's attack and remain unshaken, this is effected by maneuvers direct and indirect. That the impact of your army may be like a grindstone dashed against an egg. This is effected by the science of weak points and strong. In all fighting, the direct method may be used for joining battle, but indirect methods will be needed in order to secure victory. So that's really important, and I already highlighted it in blue, but now I want to highlight it again. So I will use my cool One Piece coaster. So direct methods may be used in joining battle, but indirect methods will be needed in order to secure victory. So indirect methods is also very important in war. The art of war. Indirect tactics, efficiently applied, are inexhaustible as heaven and earth. Unending is the flow of rivers and streams. Like the sun and moon, they end but to begin anew. Like the 4 seasons, they pass away to return once more. So this is about indirect tactics. There are not more than 5 musical notes, yet the combination of these 5 give rise to more melodies than can ever be heard. Wow. There are not more than 5 primary colors, blue, yellow, red, white, and black, yet in combination they produce more hues than can ever be seen. There are not more than 5 cardinal tastes, sour, acrid, salt, sweet, and bitter, yet combinations of them yield more flavors than can ever be tasted. In battle, there are not more than 2 methods of attack, the direct and the indirect, yet those 2 in combination give rise to an endless series of maneuvers. Okay. 2 methods of attack. So you can attack indirectly or you can attack directly. The direct and the indirect lead onto each other in turn. It is like moving in a circle. You never come to an end. Who can exhaust the possibilities of their combination? The onset of troops is like the rush of a torrent which will even roll stones along in its course. The onset of troops is like the rush of a torrent which will even roll stones along in its course. The quality of decision is like the well-timed swoop of a falcon which enables it to strike and destroy its victim. Therefore, the good fighter will be terrible in his onset and prompt in his decision. Energy may be likened to the bending of a crossbow. Decision to the releasing of a trigger. Mm-hmm. Amid the turmoil and tumult of battle, tumult, there may be seeming disorder and yet no real disorder at all. Amid confusion and chaos, your arrow may be without head or tail, yet it will be proof against defeat. Simulated disorder postulates perfect discipline. Simulated disorder postulates perfect discipline. Simulated fear postulates courage. Simulated weakness postulates strength. I feel like I've heard this before. I've read up to chapter 7, but I feel like this specifically I've heard in a movie or a story somewhere. And I don't think it was an anime, but I'm not sure. So let's just listen to that again. Simulated disorder postulates perfect discipline. Let me just quickly Google what postulates means. Postulates definition. Suggests or assumes the existence, fact, or truth of, as a basis of reasoning, discussion, or belief. Nominate or elect someone to an ecclesiastical office. What? So I'm assuming it's a thing suggested or assumed as true, as the basis for reasoning, discussion, or belief. Okay. Postulate, so it presumes it's true. So simulated disorder assumes perfect discipline, or assumes that perfect discipline is true. Simulated fear assumes courage. Simulated weakness assumes strength. So does it mean like if you pretend that you're in a disorder? I don't know. Hiding order beneath the cloak. You guys can, if you want to add your interpretation of that, feel welcome to do so. At the end of the day, these are, as I think I've said this before, but this is a book that has been translated and retranslated, and it gets interpreted and reinterpreted. So your thoughts on that is welcome. Sometimes I worry about these kinds of books, even like a book like the Bible. Like, it's been translated and retranslated so many times, and people translate it from their own perspectives and definitions and understandings. So some of these things might not even be what was originally meant, but the best we can do is read and think and discuss and blah, blah, blah. Hiding order beneath the cloak of disorder is simply a question of subdivision. So I was kind of right there. It's like pretending disorder postulates, assume, I don't know. That the second part, I don't know. Hiding order beneath the cloak of disorder is simply a question of subdivision. Concealing courage under a show of timidity presupposes a fund of latent energy. Masking strength with weakness is to be affected by tactical dispositions. Okay. Thus, one who is skillful at keeping the enemy on the move maintains deceitful appearances, according to which the enemy will act. He sacrifices something that the enemy may snatch it. He sacrifices something that the enemy may snatch it. You know what that makes me kind of feel like? Just that one line, though. It feels like, remember in Attack on Titan, when, what was his name? I think I mentioned this last time. Willie? When he went there and proclaimed, the horrible Titans, they're so scary, we must war against them. We will war, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, Eren grabbed the bait and he proved his own speech. So he sacrificed something that the enemy may snatch it. And through doing that, his speech, which was just words in front of a bunch of people at that time, who really had no idea what he was talking about, because those people have never really seen a Titan. I don't think. But you understand what I'm saying? And then, boom, by grabbing the bait, it's like Aaron proved it to the world, because wasn't there a bunch of people from all over the world there? And he effectually proved his argument that he was making to turn the world against the Titans. But yeah, and it's so funny to me that people think, and obviously if you have this opinion, that's fine, but I'm just saying I don't understand it, that people justify Aaron's actions because one man declared this war. So they justify that actions, and even though no one else accepted or declared war, no one agreed necessarily, like, no one, there was, you know what I'm saying? It was one man declaring war, and then, the thousands upon thousands of innocent people that died thereafter doesn't matter because of that one man declaring war. Even though by doing what he did, he essentially, Aaron, proved Willie's speech wrong right in the first place. Like, it's so, but okay. He sacrificed his life for that, and I feel like, personally, I don't feel like Willie would have regretted that whole speech, because that's what he truly believed, and essentially Aaron proved him right. But not in terms of all Titans, but from now, all those people know about Titans is that one right there that just proved what Willie said. Oh, they're so scary. Oh, we have to kill them, otherwise we're all gonna die. Yeah, well, now. But okay, I'm rambling. By holding out baits, he keeps him on the march. Then, with a body of picked men, he lies in wait for him. The clever combatant looks to the effect of combined energy and does not require too much from individuals. Does not require too much from individuals. Hence his ability to pick out the right men and utilize combined energy. When he utilizes combined energy, his fighting men become, as it were, like unto rolling logs or stones. For it is the nature of a log or stone to remain motionless on level ground, and to move when on a slope. If four-cornered, to come to a standstill, but if round-shaped, to go rolling down. Thus the energy developed by good fighting men is as the momentum of a round stone rolled down the mountain, thousands of feet in height. So much on the subject of energy. What piqued my interest the most in this chapter is the indirect versus direct methods of battle, or methods of attack. I wonder if there are other books kind of exploring the meanings behind each of these little passages and expanding on it. I will see if I can get a book like that. Chapter 6, Weak Points and Strong. Sun Tzu said, Whoever is first in the field and awaits the coming of the enemy will be fresh for the fight. Whoever is second in the field and has to hasten to battle will arrive exhausted. Early bird gets the worm. Therefore, the clever combatant imposes his will on the enemy, but does not allow the enemy's will to be imposed on him. By holding out advantages to him, he can cause the enemy to approach of his own accord, or by inflicting damage, he can make it impossible for the enemy to draw near. If the enemy is taking his ease, he can harass him. If well supplied with food, he can starve him out. If quietly encamped, he can force him to move. If the enemy is taking his ease, the clever combatant can harass the enemy. If well supplied with food, the combatant, he can starve the enemy out. If quietly encamped, the combatant, he can force the enemy to move. Appear at points which the enemy must hasten to defend. March swiftly to places where you are not expected. So that they have to rush to get there and they're all panicky. So that is the part about if the enemy is taking his ease, he can harass him. An army may march great distances without distress if it marches through country where the enemy is not. You can be sure of succeeding in your attacks if you only attack places which are undefended. You can ensure the safety of your defense if you only hold positions that cannot be attacked. Hence, that general is skillful in attack whose opponent does not know what to defend, and he is skillful in defense whose opponent does not know what to attack. O divine art of subtlety and secrecy! Through you we learn to be invisible, subtlety and secrecy. Through you inaudible, and hence we can hold the enemy's fate in our hands. So the enemy meaning the other soldiers, the other army, because it's army versus army. As far as I understand it. You may advance and be absolutely irresistible if you make for the enemy's weak points. You may retire and be safe from pursuit if your movements are more rapid than those of the enemy. If we wish to fight, the enemy can be forced to an engagement, even though he be sheltered behind a high rampart and a deep ditch. All we need to do is attack some other place that he will be obliged to relieve. If we do not wish to fight, we can prevent the enemy from engaging us, even though the lines of our encampment be merely traced out on the ground. Wait, let me read that again. If we do not wish to fight, we can prevent the enemy from engaging us, even though the lines of our encampment be merely traced out on the ground. All we need to do is throw something odd and unaccountable in his way. Odd and unaccountable. By discovering the enemy's dispositions and remaining invisible ourselves, we can keep our forces concentrated while the enemy's must be divided. Ooh. Forces concentrated while the enemy's forces are divided. By discovering the enemy's dispositions and remaining invisible ourselves, we can keep our forces concentrated while the enemies must be divided. Divide and conquer. Also very easy to understand for me at this point after having seen it play out so many times. We can form a single united body while the enemy must split up into fractions. Hence there will be a hole pitted against separate parts of a whole, which means that we shall be many to the enemy's few. So even if they have a bigger army than you, if you split them up, it's one whole versus a part of a whole. And if we're able thus to attack an inferior force with a superior one, our opponents will be in dire straits. An inferior force, not a trained warrior versus a child or innocent civilian. The spot where we intend to fight must not be made known, for then the enemy will have to prepare against a possible attack at several different points, and his forces being thus distributed in many directions, the numbers we shall have to face at any given point will be proportionately few. The spot where we intend to fight must not be made known, for then the enemy will have to prepare against a possible attack at several different points. And his forces being thus distributed in many directions, the numbers we shall have to face at any given point will be proportionately few. For should the enemy strengthen his van, he will weaken his rear. Should he strengthen his rear, he will weaken his van. Should he strengthen his left, he will weaken his right. Should he strengthen his right, he will weaken his left. If he sends reinforcements everywhere, he will everywhere be weak. So that's with keep our forces concentrated while the enemy's forces must be divided. Numerical weakness comes from having to prepare against possible attacks. numerical strength from compelling our adversary to make these preparations against us. Knowing the place and the time of the coming battle, we may concentrate from the greatest distances in order to fight. But if neither time nor place be known, then the left wing will be impotent to succor the right. The right equally impotent to succor the left, the van unable to relieve the rear, or the rear to support the van. How much more so if the furthest portions of the army are anything under 100 li apart, and even the nearest are separated by several li. Though according to my estimate the soldiers of Yue exceed our own in number, that shall advantage them nothing in the matter of victory. I say then that victory can be achieved. Though the enemy be stronger in numbers, we may prevent him from fighting, scheme so as to discover his plans and the likelihood of their success. Rouse him and learn the principle of his activity or inactivity. Force him to reveal himself so as to find out his vulnerable spots. Carefully compare the opposing army with your own, so that you may know where strength is superabundant and where it is deficient. It keeps coming back to me the way that Rimuru wages war. In season 2, part 1 and 2, there were examples in the slime isekai where it was interesting to see the tactics Rimuru employed when fighting these wars that were leading to a bigger issue, but because he so swiftly and greatly beat these little wars, it makes like the later one so much easier, because the more I want to, after finishing this and Attack on Titan again in the future, rewatch the slime isekai, because I think that there's a lot of strategy and stuff in there, and I find that Rimuru is one that deals pretty well and shows pretty well how to fight right. But I'm diverging again and just musing, really. Don't take it super seriously, just I was thinking. Rouse him and learn the principle of his activity or inactivity. Force him to reveal himself so as to find out his vulnerable spots. Carefully compare the opposing army with your own, so that you may know where strength is superabundant and where it is deficient. In making tactical dispositions, the highest pitch you can attain is to conceal them. Conceal your dispositions, and you will be safe from the prying of the subtlest spies, from the machinations of the wisest brains. So spies is important, because spies will give you information. Information will help you find out their weaknesses so that you can balance that out with your strengths. Or not balance out, but pinpoint and whittle down, I guess. How victory may be produced for them out of the enemy's own tactics, that is what the multitude cannot comprehend. Victory, winning the war, may be produced for them out of the enemy's own tactics. So you can use it against them. If you know their tactics, you can use it against them. All men can see the tactics whereby I conquer, but what none can see is the strategy out of which victory is evolved. Do not repeat the tactics which have gained you one victory, but let your methods be regulated by infinite variety of circumstances. Infinite variety of circumstances. Military tactics are like unto war. Military tactics are like unto water. For water in its natural course runs away from high places and hastens downwards. So in war, the way is to avoid what is strong and to strike at what is weak. So, for example, if your enemy's force is focused on the right, you attack the left. If your enemy's force is focused on the front, you attack the back. Avoid what is strong and strike at what is weak. It does not mean if there is a man in front of you, you go attack his child, it just means that if he strikes left, you go right. If he strikes left, you go right. Like, it's like that. Well, at least that's how I'm understanding it. But that comes from my presupposed understanding of the main purpose of war is to end it. You know, you don't want to keep fighting war forever. They said that at the start. So we want to end the war as fast as possible, because even if you win, the longer you fight, the more you lose. And if you're fighting XYZ place and you're fighting to win and take over it or whatever, so the more you hurt it, the less you get when you win. So anyway, so the point of war is to end it, and if you end it wrong, the war will never be over. It's like the whole, if I understand it correctly, you know, the Treaty of Versailles, or whatever, the one that ended the First World War, and then they made this peace treaty, but it was just putting all the blame on one place, and it wasn't fair, if you can put it that way. And so it only started, that's what started the Second World War. So because it wasn't won right, I could call it that. Because it wasn't won fairly, or at least in that case, the peace treaty wasn't fair. It did not really end the war. It only led to the second one, which was far more devastating than the first. So that's why I think that it's important to win a war right, or when you do win it, win a war right means it includes the aftermath of the war. So a fair peace treaty. Because then you don't want to just start the next war, because then it's unending, and that is not good for you, it's not good for them, it's not good for anyone. I don't know why I started talking about that, but why did I start talking about that? I don't know. Water shapes its course according to nature of the ground over which it flows. The soldier works out his victory in relation to the foe whom he is facing. This foe right here, I'm facing you, so I will work out my victory in relation to this foe here. So basically adapt, being able to adapt is key. Let your methods be regulated by the infinite variety of circumstances. Therefore, just as water retains no constant shape, so in warfare there are no constant conditions. That is why you do not repeat the tactics which have gained you one victory. Also, so that people may not learn it and just counter. He who can modify his tactics in relation to his opponent and thereby succeed in winning may be called a heaven-born captain. The 5 elements, water, fire, wood, metal, earth, are not always equally predominant. The 4 seasons make way for each other in turn. There are short days and long. The moon has its periods of waning and waxing. And that is the end of weak points and strong. So the last chapter for today is chapter 7. Wait, I think. No, that was 2. 7, 8, 9, 10. What? 7, 8. And then 9, 10, 11, 12. So yes, 7 and 8 left. Chapter 7 is called Maneuvering. Sun Tzu said, and this is new because I haven't read up to here. This was what I read while watching the Attack on Titan finale, but then we ran out of episodes before I could continue. Sun Tzu said, in war, the general receives his commands from the sovereign. Having collected an army and concentrated his forces, he must blend and harmonize the different elements thereof before pitching his camp. After that comes tactical maneuvering, than which there is nothing more difficult. Tactical maneuvering after pitching his camp. The difficulty of tactical maneuvering consists in turning the devious into the direct and misfortune into gain. Thus, to take a long and circuitous route. After enticing the enemy out of the way, and those starting after him, to contrive to reach the goal before him, shows knowledge of the artifice of deviation. Maneuvering with an army is advantageous, with an undisciplined multitude most dangerous. If you set a fully equipped army in march in order to snatch an advantage, the chances are that you will be too late. On the other hand, to detach a flying column for the purpose involves the sacrifice of its baggage and stores. Thus, if you order your men to roll up their buff coats and make forced marches without halting day or night, covering double the usual distance at a stretch, doing 100 li in order to wrest an advantage, the leaders of all your 3 divisions will fall into the hands of the enemy. Okay. The stronger men will be in front, the jaded ones will fall behind, and on this plan, only 1/10 of your army will reach its destination. If you march 50 li in order to outmaneuver the enemy, you will lose the leader of your first division, and only half your force will reach the goal. If you march 30 li with the same object, 2/3 of your army will arrive. We may take it then that an army without its baggage train is lost. Without provisions, it is lost. Without bases of supply, it is lost. So, an army without its baggage train is lost. Without provisions, it is lost. Without bases of supply, it is lost. We cannot enter into alliances until we are acquainted with the designs of our neighbors. Oh, there's another thing in war, alliances. If you are the kind of, if you commit war crimes, you're the kind of country that is known for committing war crimes, I feel like other countries will be less inclined to align themselves with you because you're less trustworthy. Like, it's like, I want to align myself with a person who stabbed their friends in the back, because then the chances of you stabbing me in the back is pretty good. So I feel like that's another example of why I think it is important to, as if we're going to be living in civilizations, to acknowledge XYZ war crimes and make sure that during times of wars, those who do commit war crimes are held accountable. I forgot about alliances. We cannot enter into alliances until we are acquainted with the designs of our neighbors. We are not fit to lead an army on the march unless we are familiar with the face of the country, its mountains and forests, its pitfalls and precipices, its marshes and swamps. We shall be unable to turn natural advantage to account unless we make use of local guides. In war, practice dissimulation and you will succeed. Whether to concentrate or divide your troops must be decided by circumstances. Dissimulation. Concealment of one's thoughts, feelings, or character. Pretense. So basically hide, conceal what you're thinking and feeling and planning. In war, practice dissimulation, you will succeed. Whether to concentrate or to divide your troops must be decided by circumstances. Let your rapidity be that of the wind, your compactness that of the forest. In raiding and plundering, be like fire, is immovability like a mountain. Let your raiding and plundering. Let your plans be dark and impenetrable as night, and when you move, fall like a thunderbolt. When you plunder a countryside, let the spoil be divided amongst your men. When you capture new territory, cut it up into allotments for the benefit of the soldiery. Let me Google something. Mm, so plundering just means to steal things. Yeah. Okay. Blah 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 blah. Plundering be like fire. Let your plans be dark and impenetrable as night, and when you move, fall like a thunderbolt. When you plunder a countryside, let the spoils be divided amongst your men. So when you steal from a countryside, let it be divided amongst your men. When you capture new territory, cut it up into allotments for the benefit of the soldiery. So that reminds me of, and this will be a spoiler for Slime Isekai. So when I put this down, I'll stop talking about the spoiler, but it reminds me of when Rimuru would win like one battle, and then he basically beat a leader of a town or something, or a country, I don't know, and then he, because they don't have a leader, and Rimuru beat their army, he basically gave one person and a few advisors or something that country, and told them, go take over, go lead them. You are in charge now. It's your country. So in that sense, he divided up the spoils only on a much larger scale. So it's not necessarily okay. Ponder and deliberate before you make a move. Ponder and deliberate. He will conquer who has learnt the artifice of deviation. Such is the art of maneuvering. Deviation. The Book of Army Management says, on the field of battle. On the field of battle. The spoken word does not carry far enough, hence the institution of gongs and drums. Nor can ordinary objects be seen clearly enough, hence the institutions of banners and flags. Gongs and drums, banners and flags are means whereby the ears and eyes of the host may be focused on one particular point, and this is on the battlefield, on the field of battle. The host thus forming a single united body, is it impossible either for the brave to advance alone, or for the cowardly to retreat alone. This is the art of handling large masses of men. In night fighting, then, make much use of signal fires and drums, and in fighting by day, of flags and banners, as a means of influencing the ears and eyes of your army. A whole arm, and this is on the battlefield, on the field of battle. A whole army may be robbed of its spirit. A commander-in-chief may be robbed of his presence of mind. Now a soldier's spirit is keenest in the morning. By noonday it has begun to flag. And in the evening his mind is bent only on returning to camp. A clever general therefore avoids an army when its spirit is keen, but attacks it when it's sluggish and inclined to return. This is the art of studying mood. So it is important, obviously, to keep the mood of your army high and the consistent and on the same page, because otherwise it's basically divided. So mood, how they feel towards their leader, is very important, and how they feel in terms of fatigue is important. And also unitedness. All of that I feel adds to the mood because an army is made up of a bunch of individuals. So if the individual's mood is off for any reason, if it's not aligned with the leader, so they don't feel good about what the leader is doing, or if they're actually fatigued, if the leader made them walk the whole day and then fight at night, like that could, okay. Disciplined and calm, to wait the appearance of disorder and hubbub amongst the enemy. This is the art of retaining self-possession. So that's really important for an army. To be near the goal while the enemy is still far, to wait at ease while the enemy is toiling and struggling, to be well fed while the enemy is famished. This is the art of husbanding one's strength. To refrain from intercepting the enemy, an enemy whose banners are in perfect order. Oh, so you wait. To refrain from attacking an army drawn up in calm and confident array. This is the art of studying circumstances. It is a military axiom not to advance uphill against the enemy, nor to oppose him when he comes downhill. Do not pursue an enemy who simulates flight. Oh. Do not attack soldiers whose temper is keen. Do not swallow bait offered by the enemy. Do not interfere with an army that is returning home. Oh. That makes me think of what that the girl did, but I feel what's her name? Gabi. So Gabi did what I consider a war crime, which was to act hurt, and then while their guard was down, hurt them, whatever. So that I would consider a war crime. But one has to take into consideration that she's a child raised into war, not yet haven't developed critical thinking skills to the same extent that a 20-year-old has, if you consider brain development, right? So although yes, war crime, just consider it's like when someone steals, you take their age into consideration. You're not going to punish a 14-year-old the same way you'd punish a 19-year-old. That's just how we as a society has developed ourselves because of what we've studied from humans and how our brains have developed, and free will, decision making, like that's how we've made these laws, is through painstaking discussion and thinking and exploring in science. You know what I'm saying? So that I would consider a war crime, yes, although I would take into account that she's a child. But then here, where she does interfere with an army that is returning home, I feel like I can also understand Gabi's reason for doing that, because if you shouldn't interfere with an army that is returning home, you also shouldn't. It starts with do not swallow bait offered by the enemy. So that, isn't that what Aaron did? He swallowed the bait and then hurt thousands of innocent people. So like that is why it's so important for me to fight right, because once one side starts committing war crimes left, right, and center, then the other side's gonna commit war crimes left, right, and center, because you're not fighting fair, we're not fighting fair. Like, we're not taking it to the battlefield, your army versus my army. Now it's just war crime versus war crime, and that way the war will never come to an end. I mean, you might win, one side just has to win eventually, but then it's like the whole peace treaty of Versailles thing. I hope I'm remembering that right. But the peace treaty after the First World War, if you win unfairly, or if the aftermath is unfair, you only perpetuate the war. It never then comes to an end. And the point of war is to end it. You know, if it's because, okay, we can't discuss XYZ thing, so now we're going to fight about it so that we can then talk, but then one side talks from a position of power. We've defeated you, now you have to listen to us. And if both sides fighted relatively fairly, considering war, how fair that can be, but like one army fighting another army on battlefields, one out strategized the other one, it's easier to, okay, we accept defeat, you make okay, we now decide this XYZ peace treaty, but there have been examples in the past of fair peace treaties versus unfair peace treaties. And if it's a fair peace treaty, you can actually work with the other side, and you can then build a together civilization, and that way both sides are stronger and rise up. But if it's an unfair peace treaty, or if you want an unfair way, you can never really unite, and the Second World War will just then happen as a result. And that's not where you want to be, because you don't want to perpetuate war, because that doesn't really benefit either side. Do not swallow bait offered by the enemy. Do not interfere with an army that is returning home. When you surround an army, leave an outlet free. Do not press a desperate foe too hard. Such is the art of warfare. So, there is an art to warfare. And to me, that is enough to feel better about those who told me, oh, who are you to talk about war crimes? There's no war crimes. This is war. Everything goes. You can feel that way. You are obviously entitled to your opinion, but I just got frustrated, as I've said before, with people saying that I'm naive for thinking these things. No, there is an art to war. There is, in our society, in our world, civilization that exists today, war crimes do exist, and they exist for a reason. So bringing them into this discussion, when I talk about XYZ characters' actions and decisions, you can't just tell me I'm dumb for talking about the war crime or whatever. Like, you can tell me you disagree with me, and I think that character's actions are correct because I do not believe in war crimes. And then I can say, no, but I do believe in war crimes, and this is why I think it is important to know what war crimes are and to establish them and make sure that after the war ends, people are held accountable so that the war isn't perpetuated. And then you can talk like that, and you can say, I disagree with that because da 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 da. But you can't shut someone's opinion down because you don't believe in war crimes and you don't believe there's an art to war. There's good reason for me to believe that. And if you want to discuss it, fine, but you can't shut me down just by saying, no, you're being naive, you're ignorant and dumb. War, all is fair in love and war. Like, how old are you? Okay, that was rude. If you want to believe that, I'm sure you are an adult age. But you can't, why I say how old are you is because it frustrates me when people just call me names or discount my opinion just because of their position. Like, you can have your position and I can have my position, but you can't. It's like today, someone commented something and said, I can read you the comment, and I think it is. I'll explain to you why it's so annoying. Let me just get it. She didn't grasp the depth of this character's decision, and she thinks he's XYZ when objectively he is the most selfless character in all of anime history. Like, what is that? That's why I said, how old are you? What kind of argument is that? Thinking that you're objectively correct just because I have a different opinion. I'm not grasping the depth. Have you the depth? Have you ever considered that maybe you're not grasping the depth if you think that there's only one answer, one correct opinion on a fictional story? Have you ever considered that maybe you don't grasp the depth if you think the story is so one-dimensional that only you can understand the one answer that exists, and anyone with an alternate opinion, they're the dumb one? Like, I feel like that's, you know, the one with the pointing, if you point the finger, oh, you're dumb, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you. So maybe you're 3 times as dumb as I am. If you're going around telling people they don't understand the depth of a character just because they feel differently about the character. Same thing here. I believe there's an art to warfare. I believe in war crimes exist for a reason, and we need to acknowledge that. If you don't, that's fine. Let's talk about Let's talk about it. We might not come to like an agreement, but we can talk about it. This is life. There's no one right answer. I can give you my reasons why I think my answer is better, and you can give me your reasons why you think your answer is better. But at the end of the day, thinking that you have the one right answer, like if anybody lacks depth, maybe it's you. Chapter 8, Variation in Tactics. This is the last chapter for today. Sun Tzu said, in war, the general receives his commands from... Wait. Didn't we already read that part? Okay, it's the same. It starts the same. In war, the general receives his commands from the sovereign, collects his army, and concentrates his forces. Commands from the sovereign, collects his army, concentrates his forces. When in difficult country, do not encamp. In country where high roads intersect, join hands with your allies. Do not linger in dangerously isolated positions. In hemmed-in situations, you must resort to stratagem. In desperate position, you must fight. There are roads which must not be allowed, armies which must not be attacked, towns which must not be besieged, positions which must not be contested, commands of the sovereign which must not be obeyed. Interesting. The general who thoroughly understands the advantages that accompany variation of tactics knows how to handle his troops. The general who does not understand these may be well acquainted with the configuration of the country, yet he will not be able to turn his knowledge of practical account. So the student of war who is unversed in the art of varying his plans, even though he be acquainted with the 5 advantages, will fail to make the best use of his men. Hence, in the wise leader's plans, considerations of advantages and of disadvantages will be blended together. Advantages and disadvantages. So it is important to consider these things. A wise leader will consider the advantages and disadvantages. In the wise leader's plans, considerations of advantages and of disadvantages will be blended together. So we have to, for each decision, consider what are the advantages of this, what are the disadvantages of this. Not, this is the right answer, this is the only answer, we will not consider another answer, you are dumb, I am right, blah, 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 blah. If our expectation of advantage be tempered in this way, we may succeed in accomplishing the essential part of our schemes. If, on the other hand, in the midst of difficulties we are always ready to seize an advantage, we may extricate ourselves from misfortune. Reduce the hostile chiefs by inflicting damage on them, and make trouble for them and keep them constantly engaged. Hold out specious allurements and make them rush to any given point. The art of war teaches us to rely not on the likelihood of the enemy's not coming, but on our own readiness to receive him. Not on the chance of his not attacking, but rather on the fact that we have made our position unassailable. There are 5 dangerous faults which may affect a general. The very first one, recklessness, which leads to destruction. So this is called a fault which may affect a general. Recklessness is a fault. Cowardice is a fault. A hasty temper is a fault. A delicacy of honor is a fault, and over solicitude of his men. Over solicitude for his men. So let me read this again. There are 5 dangerous faults which may affect a general. Recklessness, which leads to destruction. Cowardice, which leads to capture. Hasty temper, which can be provoked by insults. Delicacy of honor, which is sensitive to shame. Over solicitude for his men, which exposes him to worry and trouble. Over solicitude. So solicitude, care or concern for someone or something. So like being hesitant to make a decision because you're worried your men will get hurt. These are the 5 besitting sins of a general, ruinous to the conduct of war. 5 besetting sins of a general, ruinous to the conduct of war. War has a conduct? What is conduct precisely? The manner in which a person behaves. Oh, you mean rules when it comes to war? Conduct? I thought that was dumb. So I just want to make it clear again if I haven't already, and I'm pretty sure I did last time. I'm not saying that this guy, Sun Tzu, is absolutely correct on a war. That is obvious. That's not what I'm saying. I'm reading this to show that I'm not the only person that thinks along certain lines. So you can't say, as a person who's never even been through war, that I can't think X, Y, Z, when even a person that has been through war and succeeded probably greatly, I don't know, Sun Tzu, he talks about the art of war, the conduct of war. There are certain things that might work out better than others. So yes, a conversation is important. And no, you can't just tell me because I believe in the war crimes that I'm ignorant and dumb. When an army is overthrown and its leader slain, the cause will surely be found amongst these 5 dangerous faults. Let them be a subject of meditation. Let it be something that we think about. Recklessness leads to destruction. Cowardice leads to capture. Hasty temper can be provoked by insults. Delicacy of honor is sensitive to shame and over-solicitude of his men, which exposes him to worry and trouble. So, when an army is overthrown and its leader slain, the cause will surely be found among these 5 dangerous faults. Oh, here is plundered. To plunder is to rob or steal from. I was looking it up, but it's right here, okay. So we have 13 chapters. That's 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Oh, we have 5 left. Well, it doesn't seem like much. I can get through it next time. I feel like I was a bit repetitive in this video, but it's just because I want to make it clear that I do not think that I'm right. I just don't like the fact that people are so sure of themselves that they have the confidence to call someone dumb for having a different opinion. Like that person who today said, I didn't grasp the depth of this character, blah, 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 just because I had a different opinion. Like, I just can't fathom telling someone that I feel this way about this character, and because you feel differently, you don't understand their depth. You're dumb. You're shallow. You're like, no, this is my opinion. That is your opinion. Let's discuss. I can't deal with that attitude. I hate it. Because the thing is, the reason why I hate it so much is because no discussion can happen, and I value discussion. But no discussion can happen when someone shuts down, like they're just like, I am right and anyone who feels differently is dumb or shallow or doesn't understand or this or that, when I'm here, I'm willing to talk. But we cannot talk when I am right and anyone who feels different is dumb and blah, 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 blah. So anyway. I'm looking forward to Attack on Titan when the time comes. I do enjoy reading this book and do enjoy reading and thinking about the art of war, conduct of war. And don't get me wrong, obviously bad things happen in war. It's not like I'm expecting war to be like a game of chess where I make my move, you make your move, I make my move, you make your move perfectly, and no one dies and no one gets hurt and nothing bad happens. Sometimes bad things will happen. But to me, there's a difference between bad things happening and supporting or loving or fucking, I don't know, a character that doesn't need to make certain decisions, can, in my opinion, make better decisions, but chooses not to. You understand what I'm saying? Like, it's difficult to talk about this out of context of the story. So I'm gonna wait. That's why I said I'm excited for the story to come back. And yeah, talk about things. And how they play out and whether or not I agree with XYZ decision or that decision. So, for example, I'm trying to keep it now relevant outside of the story. I've recently been talking to a lot of people about World War II and how it ended. And people were saying that this character's actions is like in World War II, where, the bomb was dropped on Japan, and that resulted most probably in sparing a lot of people because it ended the war there. And yes, many people died, but if that didn't end the war, probably, we can't say for certain, but probably the war would have continued on for much longer. And then in the end, even though many people died there, more people would have died had it continued. So that's how people reason, okay, the United States decision to drop the bomb on Japan was reasonable in that moment. So yeah, it's a horrible thing that happened, and it sucks that these things happen in war, but people can justify that action for XYZ reasons, right? So yeah, horrible things happen in war, I'm aware of that, but that it's circumstantial. So let's say, because the bomb was dropped at this peak of the war where two major forces were just about to clash, and if the bomb wasn't dropped there and the war didn't stop there, it would have caused much more devastation. But so it's circumstantial in the sense that, let's say that they dropped the bomb towards the end of the war, like the war was dying down and no one was really, like, it was on the verge of, okay, the end. Imagine dropping the bomb at that point. Would we still feel that it was a justified, necessary, reasonable action to take? In the same, what about if so the dropping of the bomb led to the 77 years of, we haven't had a world war in 77 years, right? There have been wars, a lot of shit happens, bad shit happens in the world, but there hasn't been another world war because of this atomic bomb being dropped, whatever. So people reason, okay, it was fair because now we've enjoyed 77 years of peace because everyone's afraid of this nuclear war, right? But imagine if the war had ended, and like a year after the war had ended, the United States decided, you know what, I'm gonna drop this bomb, and because we're scared of World War III, So let's show them right now what we're capable of, and then that way we'll ensure that World War III won't be started, because then everyone will know the power of atomic war, and that will put fear, and then everyone will be more hesitant because now we can all destroy each other. But now that they dropped the bomb a year after, like, that's not a reasonable, fair action. So, but it led to 77 years of peace, but it's that's not. I don't agree with that. Like, I feel it's the same action, but one happened in the peak of war versus the other one happening like while the war is dying down or even a year after. But hey, it led to 77 years of peace because now we just did it so that a World War III doesn't happen. That was our goal. We're gonna drop this now after the war, but it's so that a World War III doesn't happen. Like, it's not reasonable, and just actions depend on the circumstances. So the reason for me rambling on now is just to emphasize that I understand that bad things are going to happen in war. A fucking atomic bomb being dropped on a country is a horrible thing. But there are certain actions that are reasonable when you look at it as a whole, which, for example, I think in our history, real history, where the bomb was dropped at the peak of the war, and it most probably led to a quicker end, which stopped a whole more bad war happening and many more people dying. So as a whole, I would agree with that action. It was, the leader of a country of 200 million people made the decision. So I would be more ready to say, okay, I understand, not an ideal situation, but I understand his decision. Versus, okay, it's towards the end of the war, we don't really need to drop the bomb because we're right on the cusp of winning, but let's drop the bomb anyway to scare people. Like, I'm not as quick to say that action is justifiable, is reasonable. You know what I'm saying? So, in the same sense, bad things are going to happen in the war, but that doesn't mean I have to agree with each and every fictional character's decision if I feel that is not an action that needed to be taken in those circumstances. That is why I've been explaining this whole thing about that circumstance versus that circumstance. So if you do feel like, okay, well, it is towards the end of war, yeah, so we don't need to drop the bomb, but let's do it anyway. If you feel that is justified because you're hoping that it will make people scared of of nuclear war, then okay, if you are in power, then drop the bomb. But there are certain circumstances in which I can say, okay, maybe you didn't have a choice there, versus other situations where I feel you could have chosen differently. You could have chosen something much better. This is not helping. This is not solving any problems. And that is up to each person to decide. And the only way that we can learn anything is if we talk about it, especially when it comes to fictional shows, because no one's actually getting hurt. So yes, it's important to talk. And yes, it's important for a discussion not to just call someone dumb for having a different opinion. But okay, maybe that's just me. I can understand the frustration. I can understand the frustration when you feel like, oh, this person isn't understanding me. I'm just going to call them names. I can understand that I felt that way, especially because oftentimes it's me versus 20 other people that has watched a show 6 times and they feel like their opinion is the only right opinion, and I have to share my opinion versus 20 other people. Like, yeah, I can get frustrating. But just all I'm saying is take into account you're talking to one person here that is allowed to have another opinion. And try and keep it civil. Let's try and keep it civil. But okay, I'll see you guys next time for part 3. Bye.